KUAM News Hotspot is brought to you by
Pacific Points, Do More, Get More, and Calvo Enterprises, Inc.
The menu, brought to you by King's Restaurant, always open, always local, and Ruby Tuesday Guam, home of the Fresh Garden Bar.
Howdy everyone, and welcome to a very special edition of The Hub. I'm Nestor Licanto. This week, we're going on a grand tour of the Kansai region of Japan, hosted by United Airlines. We're going to be visiting 3 of the most culturally and historically significant cities in all of Japan: Osaka, Kyoto, and Nara. It's going to be great. Let's get started. It's just a short 3.5-hour direct flight from Guam to Kansai International Airport. It's the gateway to the 3 major Japanese prefectures we'll be visiting as part of a United Airlines familiarization tour. The airline has not hosted a FAM tour from Guam since the pandemic, and for this first one in almost 3 years, it chose well. Osaka, Kyoto, and Nara are located in the south-central region of Japan's main island of Honshu. This is known as the Kansai region. Often referred to as the cradle of Japanese civilization. That's because the country's first capital city was established in Nara in the year 710. In Japan, the capital is wherever the emperor lives, and he remained in Nara for just 70 years before moving on to what is modern-day Kyoto. It remained the capital for 1,000 years before the emperor moved again to what is now modern-day Tokyo. Our tour of Kansai began in the city of Osaka, and you can't go to Osaka without visiting the Osaka Castle.
tour here at the Osaka Castle will throw you back into Japanese medieval times. The structure itself is absolutely awe-inspiring.
In contrast, Osaka the city has all the trappings of a modern metropolis. It is the third most populous city in Japan with more than 2.5 million residents. It's a major financial hub and is considered one of the most multicultural cities in the country. We wrapped up the first day of the 4-day tour at the Omeda Sky Tower, which features a breathtaking nighttime view of the Osaka city. There are two 40-story towers that connect at the two top floors with bridges and an escalator. The buildings, which were built in 1993, rise to some 570 feet and feature this rooftop observatory that promotes the stunning cityscape.
Hello everyone, we're here on day 2 of our trip to the Kansai area, sponsored by United Airlines. We're on our way to Koyasan, which was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Here we go.
To get to our first stop, Mount Koya or Koyasan, we took a steep cable car ride up. Koyasan features 8 peaks and an 800-meter high valley and has been designated as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. We were headed up to the epicenter of Shingon Buddhism, one of Japan's most important sects. At the summit, we met our guide, Nobuhiro Tamura, a devout monk and follower of Shingon Buddhism. He would be leading us through this amazing cemetery known as Okunoin. It's no ordinary cemetery though. It's the largest in Japan, with more than 200,000 tombstones. This is a sacred place that dates back to the year 816. And most importantly, it houses the mausoleum of Kobodaishi, founder of Japan's Shingon Buddhism.
We believe that he is not dead. He's still there, alive, having eternal meditation for 1,200 years. It's a famous legend among Japanese people.
Kobodaishi is one of Buddhism's most significant religious figures, not just in Japan, but in the world. He's the founder of an esoteric form of Buddhism and consecrated this mountain retreat for holy purposes. A mausoleum is located on the site where followers like Tamura-san believe he remains inside, selflessly advocating for the salvation of all and meditating for world peace. The walk through the cemetery may be one of the highlights of this entire tour.
One thing that you can definitely say about this site is that it's very serene and very calming.
This square one symbolizes earth, ground. Round one symbolizes water, and fire, wind, and space. Earth, water, fire, wind, and space. And this tombstone itself symbolizes the universe. Okay? So these 5 things. Okay? And one more thing to be added, which is consciousness, so mind. Okay? So these 5 symbols and consciousness, okay, which is invisible. These 6 things create everything. In Japan, there were 250 samurai clans, okay? Clans everywhere fighting each other. Okay? And then nearly half of them, they built tombs in this cemetery. Okay? So this is one samurai clan.
But the highlight of this inspiring walk is a place we're not able to show you. Photos and videos are not allowed of sect founder Kobodaishi's mausoleum.
If you come here 6 a.m. or 10:30, you can see monks delivering meals to the mausoleum. Okay? And can you see the bridge? Okay? After the bridge is the most sacred area in the town. One of the sacred places in Japan. Okay? So please, no camera after the bridge. Okay? No eating, no smoking, please. Okay? In ancient time, there was no bridge. So people must go through the river, wash, purify themselves, okay? And enter.
That ritual has been replaced these days with another symbolic cleansing. You could spend hours wandering around this expansive forest where the Japanese cedar trees rise 900 feet into the sky and the air seems to breathe so pure. And you can also stay overnight.
Do you know how many temples in this town? Now we have 117 temples.
Wow.
Okay? And about 50 of them you can stay overnight. Okay? It's called shukubo. Okay? It's not hotel, it's not ryokan, it's shukubo.
Shikubo is a practice that dates back centuries where you can sleep like a monk in a sparse, modest temple lodging intended for visiting monks, but now available for tourists. From the beautiful mountains, we headed back down the cable car. We found our way into a completely different environment from the serene to the hustle and bustle of the downtown Shinsekai district. This is a place with a colorful history. Travel sites describe the neighborhood as about as close as it gets in Japan to a seedy district. Whether the stigma is deserved is open to debate. This is where many of the poor and homeless come to wander the streets, but many of the young and middle class also come around to unwind after a hard day's work. The biggest attraction, though, is the Senkatsu Tower. It was originally designed to resemble Paris's Eiffel Tower and provide spectacular views of the city. It was first built in 1912 and replaced after a fire in 1956 by the current structure, which stands nearly 300 feet tall. But the highlight for many of the tower visit is the observation deck with a glass floor where you can peer directly down at the streets below. An intimidating sight, to say the least.
Good day everyone, and welcome to day 3 of our tour of the Kansai region of Japan, and we're headed to Kyoto, one of the most historically and culturally significant cities in all of the country.
Kyoto is considered the cultural capital of Japan. It's a designated UNESCO World Heritage Site with many Buddhist temples, Shinto shrines, palaces, and gardens. Our guide on this whirlwind tour covering several amazing cultural sites was Yuki Tanazaki. One of our first stops was the Grand Golden Pavilion.
Golden Pavilion consists of 3 different types of architecture. first floor is based on the nobility home of the 11th century. And second floor is based on the samurai warrior's house. So no window, protect the inside from arrows. And third floor is in Zen style. You can see the very unique arch window. That kind of window we can see in Zen temples. Original Kyoto Imperial Palace was located 2 kilometers away from here, but it was often damaged by fire. At those times, noble families' homes were used as a temporary residence of emperor. This Kyoto Imperial Palace was originally one of those temporary residences. And this Kyoto Imperial Palace also got damaged many times by fire. And current building was built in 1885, so not very old.
The Golden Pavilion is a Zen Buddhist temple. Its top 2 floors are actually covered in pure gold leaf. It's built alongside a large pond where the reflections offer a stunning backdrop. Our next stop was the Kyoto Imperial Palace, the residence of Japan's imperial family until 1868, when the emperor and capital were moved from Kyoto to Tokyo.
This Kyoto Imperial Palace was originally one of those temporary residences. And this Kyoto Imperial Palace also got damaged many times by fire. And current building was built in 1885, so not very old. And Kyoto Imperial Palace was not only home of emperor, but also played very important role in political reform.
Our tour continued at the Fushimi Inari Shrine, famous for its thousands of torii gates, which lead to trails into the vast wooded forest of the sacred Mount Inari, which rises about 760 feet above sea level.
Fushimi-inari Shrine was founded in the early 8th century. In Japan, there are 30,000 branches of Inari Taisha. This is head shrine. The god of agriculture and business is in shrine. So people come here to pray for the success in business, promotion, and also longevity, and safety of the family, and more. And this vermilion color symbolizes well harvest. And then inside of this shrine, you can find there are a lot of foxes. You can find the foxes. And fox is a messenger of the god.
The trails up the mountain to many smaller shrines span more than 2.5 miles and take approximately 2 hours to walk up. Our final stop was one of the most impressive, the Kiyomizu Temple, also known as the Temple of Pure Water. It is Kyoto's most popular tourist attraction and is also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Legend has it that a priest received a vision and collaborated with others to ultimately construct the complex. Not a single nail is used to build it.
2 years later, temple was built, and this canon was enshrined in the temple as the main object of worship. That is the origin of Kiyomizu Temple. Unfortunately, Kiyomizu Temple was burned down more than 10 times. Most of the current building was built in 1633. And this temple is very famous for the stage, which stands on the steep cliff.
The viewing platform and main hall are designated as an official national treasure of Japan.
Half a day, everyone. It's day 4 of our trip to the Kansai region of Japan, and we're headed to Nara, where you can find one of the biggest Buddhas you'll ever see and some deer and other wildlife. Here we go.
Nara was the capital of Japan from the years 710 to 794 as the seat of the emperor before the capital was moved to Kyoto. As Japan's first permanent capital, it is one of the country's most historically and culturally important locations. It too is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. But what might first impress visitors is the abundance of deer that roam freely throughout Nara's deer park. In Shinto mythology, deer are considered to be messengers of the gods, and Nara's deer have been designated a national treasure. There are deer everywhere. But the main attraction in Nara is the Todaji Temple, which houses the Great Buddha. Our Nara tour guide, Kachiko Sato.
It's the world's largest wooden structure in classic style. And originally, it was founded in Nara period, about 1,300 years ago. And why this giant temple was built? The reason is, in those days, in Nara period, Japan suffered from epidemic, natural disasters, and cultural instability. And the emperor in those days, who was a devoted priest, tried to save the nation with the power of Buddhism.
She tells the story of how one monk left the temple, which is usually restricted, and went out to recruit help to build the Buddha temple.
He walked around the country to talk about the importance of construction of this temple to save our nation. And many people who admired Gyoki donated money and materials, and of course the workforce. And in those days, half the population of Japan joined this project. And the year 752, the Great Buddha was built and the Todaji was completed.
Todaji became the headquarters of all Buddhist temples in Japan, and she says all Japanese people try to visit at least once in their lifetime. Our final stop is the Kasuga Shrine, a final step back into medieval Japan. It is surrounded by untouched forest of more than 620 acres near the summit of Mount Kasuga. Hunting and logging have been prohibited here since the year 841, and the surrounding flora, fauna, and wildlife have remained unchanged since the Nara period.
There is a sacred place, sacred mountain. No one is allowed to enter this sacred mountain. And on the summit of this mountain, the first deity landed. And if your mind is very clear and pure, and when you crouch down, and you can see the summit of the mountain, the priest said.
Well, that concludes our 4-day whirlwind tour of the wonderfully diverse region of Kansai in Japan. So if you're considering where to go on your next vacation, this place is very highly recommended. You will not be disappointed. Thanks for watching, everyone. We'll see you again next week on The Hub.